government, just look at what they do. Can't trust the media, they're all full of lies. What you know a little bit, or hoping you die. Live free or die. Live free or die. Live free or die. Live free or die.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting edition of Hardfire TV on Brooklyn Free Speech Cable. My name is Cameron Weber. I'm an economist and historian. With me today, I have Erik Frankel. Erik, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back.
Thanks, Erik. This is about your third or fourth show together.
Third.
Yeah. This is our first show, Hardfire show, in person since the March 2020 lockdown. So we've been recording 30 shows on Zoom, and this will be our first in person, so appreciate it. Erik is a proprietor of Frankel's.
Yeah, we're there since 1890.
Since 1890, which is just down the street from where we are now in Sunset Park. And Erik's fourth or fifth generation? Fourth generation. And you have a son who, no telling what the future portends. That's what we're going to be talking about, right?
Well, yeah, the way retail is going right now, it's
but you're also an international businessman, and you do sell a lot of things online.
yeah. So, we have workshops in Vietnam and Myanmar where we teach people how to create sustainable business through e-commerce.
Right. Yeah. And I know in Vietnam you also provide employment opportunities to people who are victims of Agent Orange.
Yeah. Many people with disabilities, we teach them how to knit, how to sew, make jewelry.
Yeah, you have a sample of your jewelry now, right?
Yeah.
Did you want to show it or not?
It's the democracy in Asia.
Yeah. So Erik does a lot of different, and your latest item I know your father was a clothier. He really enjoyed following fashions and in boots and clothes. And your latest bestseller is what?
Yeah, well, we sell everything from Burmese pants.
Burmese pants is the latest buzz item,
clothes,
right?
Instant noodles.
Instant noodles.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you diversified into food for
Yeah.
a while during the COVID era with the supply chain blockage. Right. So today's topic is Erik Frankel on social services, which we talked about. The first show we did together was about your show, about your store. Was part of our entrepreneurial segment, and then the next one we did was Erik Frankel discusses corruption.
Yes.
And one of the things in New York, because you also are involved in politics. Yes. And currently, January 2023, you're running for an office.
Yes, City Council, District 38.
District 38, which covers Brooklyn, Sunset Park,
Diker Heights now.
Diker Heights, and Red Hook, or no?
Yes, Red
Hook.
I say to run again, it's like breaking out of jail, breaking back in again.
Right.
I think people have the right to know who our politicians work for. So even if we could reach a few people.
Yeah, your platform, well, again, is anti-corruption.
Yeah.
And you're not a socialist.
No, I'm social,
Very social.
I'm afraid, of what I would say. If people knew what our politicians were doing, they wouldn't be doing it.
Right. So that's what we're trying to do, is to help provide the blue sky, I guess.
Yes. And the fear of big government is something that we take very lightly, where it seems like where all the progressives are actually pushing for bigger government. Right.
And in fact, we did a recent show on crony capitalism about how the state is in bed with big business, and everyone else suffers as the big businesses get tax breaks and things. But one of the things you mentioned was in the first show we did together, Erik Frankel discusses corruption. We talked about social services, and the social services aren't really supposed to work.
No, they don't. It's hard convincing people that the politicians and nonprofit organizations that are providing services for you,
right,
they're not there to help you.
The idea is to just perpetuate the services.
Yes.
Not to solve the problem, but to perpetuate the services.
Yeah.
So I'll give an example. So I'll start the script. Eric's family has been in the Sunset Park for 130 years.
134.
134 years. So Eric has a lot of history and local insight to bring to our discussion. I learned a lot from Eric, especially about local New York City politics. Eric, you had mentioned more than once that city social services really aren't supposed to work. We discussed that maybe it is to the city government's benefit to keep a certain amount, for example, a certain amount of homeless on the streets and on the subways.
Mm.
That way, there's always a problem which requires government money and bureaucracy to solve, as well as not-for-profit organizations to solve. So it's a constant flow of money. There are many not-for-profit groups and government unions and construction unions who benefit from providing city-financed temporary shelter. This too is a big source of votes for Democrats, socialists. If we really solve the homeless problem, say by reducing zoning regulations and allowing more housing, more private housing and housing ownership, you're also, one of your political platforms is the ownership society.
Yeah,
right?
home ownership. Without home ownership, you have no equity. And all these programs that we spend billions of dollars, it's not designed to create home ownership or equity.
Right.
It's designed to keep people poor and dependent on the state.
And the social services, which are huge not-for-profit organizations, the heads of which make a lot of money.
Correct. And also they don't pay property tax. They don't buy, they don't have skin in the game.
And that's exactly what the ownership society is about. You're not going to burn down your neighborhood if you have skin in the game. You're not going to burn down the businesses if the business is your own business.
And they use gentrification as a guise to stop development.
Yeah.
But the reason why they don't want competition, they want to be the only ones who could develop, who gets to live, who gets to eat, who gets to work.
By perpetuating poverty.
Absolutely.
It perpetuates poverty.
And
we see that in Sunset Park.
Yeah. Even if you look at government housing, if you make more money, they raise your rent. And I think it's designed to keep people there and keep them poor and dependent on social services.
Right. Okay, and if we really solve the homeless problem by loosening up zoning and allowing private ownership instead of the mayor's, I'll put this in another graphic, but here's the current mayor of New York City. He wants to do 500,000 units of housing. But would these be private sector housing or public housing? Who decides? Who decides?
Probably our city comptroller, who owns the Fifth Avenue Committee, who are building all the affordable homes, which aren't affordable. But it is
who grants the rights.
Right.
It grants the rights, which then creates the perpetual cycle of grant me the rights to do business and I'll contribute to your campaign.
Yeah. And then also home ownership also changes the narrative, because they say you don't want to see police until you own a home.
Right.
And then once you own a home, and I say a lot of the people leaving, they say, you know how they greet each other in Tennessee and Pennsylvania? They say, where in Brooklyn are you from? Because there's so many people who were homeowners who are selling and they're moving to other.
Oh, yeah. There's a big exodus from New York right now to Florida, to Texas. Derek Sacerdote and I did a show about that, why people are leaving New York. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that has to do with the high taxes, the difficulty of doing business, and therefore the expensive cost of living, real estate tax, income tax, property tax.
Yeah. Most people don't realize commercial property tax, there's no cap.
Yeah.
So they could raise it as much as they want.
Oh, yeah. You know,
where that home ownership, there's a 2.5% increase cap.
Right.
But the people in Sunset Park are paying more than people in Park Slope now.
Yeah. Right. So, 500,000, 500,000 new housing units in New York. Good idea.
Yeah.
It's just a question of how.
Yeah, but who owns it? Who gets the rent?
Right. Who owns that? Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be the state.
Who gets to, right. So that's why I think another thing we wanted to discuss when you came in, you were saying, Cameron, I'm getting a little bit tired of fighting the system.
Yeah.
But So you'll see we have this book, Socratic Citizenship, behind us there. That's kind of what we're doing is Socratic citizenship, which is the highest form of patriotism is dissent.
Yeah.
Right. So we talked about homelessness perpetuating itself, which then feeds over into the subway and subway crimes and shelters and city services, which aren't designed to work because you want an optimal amount of crime, an optimal amount of homelessness, so that you can continue to provide social services through the state bureaucracy and the social not-for-profits that get the yours and my taxpayer money for pretending to solve a problem that they don't really want to solve.
Right. Like now, I see a lot of people pushing for, they want more policing, which years ago this didn't happen. But years ago there weren't so many, not shelters, but hotels.
Yeah.
And I think it's the hotels that around it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of crime and drug use.
Especially in Manhattan, right? Do we have those in this neighborhood?
Pretty much every hotel has been turned into a halfway house.
Right.
In Sunset Park.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
But it's by design. They had
that's the point.
Yeah, they were I think it was the city planning board. I sat in on a few meetings on our community board.
Yeah.
And they said that they could build homeless shelters, not homeless shelters, hotels for people out of prison or
halfway houses.
Yeah, halfway houses.
Which are never halfway.
Yeah.
They're always
and
time.
They could build without approval from the zoning department.
Right.
Where I have a small building, 2 stories. I can't build up, even though we have a housing crisis. But I could knock it down and build an 8-story homeless shelter without government approval.
Would you be able to put your business in the bottom of it?
No.
Could you create a not-for-profit organization that would give you a high salary to then channel the people into that?
Yeah, and then that's only if I could get politicians elected.
Right. That's not really what you want to do. You're a private entrepreneur. You want to actually create economic growth and home ownership and a healthy, safe environment where your family has been for more than 100 years.
I mean, we had 75 acres of land behind Costco that we just gave to a Norwegian company, which I think it would have been better used to build co-ops and condos for first-time homeowners in our community.
Yeah. Let the private sector do it instead of giving the land. It's so very easy for the city to say, okay, central plan, we got 30 acres that are post-industrial. Let's just turn it over to one company instead of allow private entrepreneurs to develop in an organic way, in a supply and demand local way. Just the city plans it, turns it over to a big campaign donor, and problem solved.
Yeah, I mean, these companies, they lobby everyone, the DOT to the EPA, the House, the Senate, U.S. Coast Guard. They lobby both Republicans and Democrats.
Oh yeah, but there's not a lot of not many. But our point in this program is not really to pick on Democrats or Republicans, because I personally dislike them both equally. But you run as a Democrat.
I run as a Democrat because that is the pathway to victory.
And because
my friends, when I registered to vote, my best friend's mother was a union delegate. She goes, you have to register as a Democrat.
Sure. That way you don't get audited too.
Oh yeah. Well,
no, sorry. We're just trying to be a little humorous there on Hardfire. So speaking of this, I don't know if you're that concerned with Industry City. Do you know about Industry City?
Yeah. It's down the block from us.
Would you be covering that as a city council?
Yes.
Do you think that's an example of a social service? I mean, these are these huge warehouses that were used as shipping depots during the Second World War or First World War? Both.
I believe both.
Illegally.
Yeah.
Initially illegally. So there's these huge warehouses that this federal government pulls out after the war. They sit there vacant. And then so instead of allowing the private sector to move in piecemeal, I couldn't go in and develop and buy a small part of one, because the city took it over. Turns it over to a developer.
Right. There were factories in there for like a blink of an eye.
For a blink of an eye, actual business there.
But and then it became something for a hip place for
upscale.
Yeah. But then now you go by, there's a lot of government social service. The FBA is there. The Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce. There are a lot of government agencies, and also mental health clinics are opening up, and a lot of the nonprofits that had opposed Industry City have
Right.
offices inside, like Upros.
Oh, maybe it was just a trade-off in the long term.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
To do what I say, not what I
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
And my favorite one is the Economic Development Corporation of
Yeah.
the city. I think that they've been very successful in developing the city, especially with the amount of people leaving.
Well, most people don't realize the CEO of Industry City, when he pulled his own permit for Industry City because they wanted to expand, is now the president of the New York Economic Development Corporation.
Oh my gosh. But we won't name any names.
Right. We won't mention Andrew. But no,
no names. No
Okay.
names. Yeah, especially because
yeah. But also the New York Economic Development Corporation doesn't pay property tax.
right, exactly. And that's a big problem about New York, is that the city gets a majority of its income from property tax, yet the city's taking over more and more land, giving more and more tax breaks to large corporations. So the tax base is disappearing. So it's like a virus that's eating itself, or a termite.
Yeah.
So it's completely unsustainable.
Absolutely. And Amazon's not paying property tax.
Exactly.
Small businesses are.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't lobby.
Yes, because, well, you are a small business person who is aware politically, and part of that is because you left New York for a while.
Yeah.
You came back. You were doing business overseas, and then you were locked down in the United States, back home with your family and the family business. You looked around and said, "What? My gosh, what happened to New York City?
Yeah.
This is completely corrupt."
And then, absolutely, I started listening to our local politicians. And I'm like, oh my God, they lie about everything.
Yeah.
I mean, everything.
Yeah.
And I said, instead of complaining, I said, I'm going to replace you.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what I was getting into. But once you run for office, you see how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
And I say, once you see how it's made, you don't want to eat it. And
you want to make a better sausage in your case.
Or move to Pennsylvania.
Or, yeah.
No, but I want to make a better sausage.
Yeah. So what about any other social services? I mean, I have a list of social services that we could talk about. Is there anything you want to talk about? The social, we talked about. Okay, we talked about how about let's see, we covered Industry City. How about public education? Do you want to tackle that one?
Public education. I think the state is intentionally, they took civics out of our curriculum, and I think they're trying to keep people in the inner city ignorant. Yes. And misinformed. Not just ignorant, just
well, it feeds state propaganda.
Yeah,
how the state can solve all the problems and so it just perpetuates the statism, which we've already mentioned is unsustainable, as the state eats itself, takes over more and more land, and no one makes a profit.
Yeah.
And no one has ownership.
Yeah, because even like the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, it's all taken out of curriculum. Of course, how do you teach like the Second Amendment now?
Or equal treatment under law? How do you teach that now?
Right.
Or equal protection under law?
Yeah. They said you have to get them when they're young in education, and because by the time they hit university, that there is no.
Well, the same thing happens at the university in most cases also, that the statism about how the state can solve everybody's problems instead of going more and more bankrupt. Social services. So public education. How about I'm all for as an economist, as the economist in the room, I know that competition brings a better quality and a lower price. Yeah. You know that from your own business.
Yes. Well, I remember we're
You're constantly innovating, constantly trying to provide new tools and instruments and product that people want to buy voluntarily.
Yeah.
It's good quality at a low price. How come we can't do that with the schools?
Yeah, well, our marketing strategy was we took as many ideas as possible, you throw it against the wall and you see what sticks.
Yeah.
And I sent
fly it up the flagpole, see if it flies.
Right.
Throw it against the wall, see if it sticks.
Yeah. But now the education here is broken. It's beyond broken.
So sorry to say, but it also, I mean, I see more and more schools being built here.
Yeah, they're like prisons.
They
They're
are, they
prisons.
look like prisons and they act like prisons, and we keep building them.
Mm.
Even those school people are moving out of New York. I mean, the amount of public school children has declined 5% in the
Yeah.
last couple of years, yet we keep building more and more of these
Yeah,
prisons.
because it's part of expanding the state. I also think
It
this
crowds
is,
out
yeah,
private housing.
this is also how politicians buy union support.
Exactly. Especially
Because they don't want home ownership. We have thousands of people in our community in construction. You have to keep them working. They
Yep.
build some schools.
and teachers unions are a big
Yeah.
part of it. Teachers unions are huge donors
Mm.
to Democrat socialists. Well, we only have just a few minutes, 10 minutes left.
Mm.
So I wanted to move on now towards Eric's participation in local power. On the way up, Eric, you said that is it worth it?
It's hard. I say to run again is like breaking out of jail, breaking back in again. I believe people have the right to know who our politicians work for.
Yeah.
And right now there's no coverage of local politics, of our local elections.
Well, you were in the Star Review out of Red Hook.
Yeah.
They gave you an interview.
Yeah, I made page 13 because Patti Smith's reunion concert was more important.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm
They gave you
appreciative.
some coverage.
Yeah. But I think it's important to cover local. I mean, if our local news agencies don't cover local politics,
Yeah, exactly.
then it's all relevant to how much money you could raise.
Well,
how many mailers could you send out?
Exactly. There's centralization of media. There's centralization of politics. It's all about the Democrat Party is all not about representing your local, and the Republican Party is not about representing your local community. But as a politician, can you move up to become vice president or senator? You know, start. But so, Eric, can you tell us what your strategy is to get elected? I have heard you say that your opponents are democratic socialists.
Yes. Yeah.
What do you mean by this? What is a democratic socialist, and what do you offer that is different?
Well, they claim that they're for the working people, but that's not true. Most of the hardworking people in our community don't vote.
Right.
So they're moving in. These are people really who are upset that they can no longer afford Clinton Hill or Park Slope. They move into Sunset Park. You know, they punch down at Republicans often, but Republicans don't get you elected to office in Sunset Park.
Right.
So they claim that they're democratic socialists and that they're for the poor people, but a lot of them are trust fund kids and with wealthy parents.
And who work for and run not-for-profit organizations.
Huge nonprofit organizations.
Well, that's a form of virtue signaling. Look at how good I am.
And they're funded by billionaires. I think most people don't realize you have super wealthy funds donating money to these environmental social groups.
That's right.
ESGs. Then these social groups help elect a politician.
Yep.
Then the politician will pass legislation for those super wealthy funds. And then they also kick money back to the community activists.
And back through the not-for-profit organizations.
Yes.
How about and so what do you offer that's different? Exposing the truth? I mean, do you think that you can replace social service? We've already talked about allowing zoning changes to private housing. We've already talked about allowing competition in schools.
They want to do away with standardized testing, which, I mean, it's complicated, the standardized testing, because
well, as long as you allow competition between schools,
but you need some type of
anything that a private school can do to attract students, be it private testing, be it doing art all day. Right. Anything that creates a supply and demand and not a regimented mentality.
Oh, absolutely.
But
I believe that they want to do with standardized testing. It's not because they care about the students. I think it's more they're fearful of how well the Asian community does on these standardized tests, and it's a form of racism.
Yeah, not only that, but the standardized testing also shows the poor quality of the education.
Yeah, it will reflect on the teachers and the administration,
and so you we've talked quite pessimistically about the way things are, and I mean, do you think there's any way to curb the democratic socialist tide? Do you think people will listen to the problems, or is the rational voter, irrational voter theory correct? In other words, that all these little minuscule problems don't affect an individual enough to where they actually care enough to learn about it and then vote those who are perpetuating these things out of office. Do you think that there's enough a way to provide enough information for people to realize that there's better solutions, or are we beating our heads against the wall?
I believe a lot of their followers have great intentions.
Exactly.
But I explained to them that the people that you're endorsing actually work for the aristocracy, the billionaires.
Exactly.
And they put up the tax forms on my website. But and then I tell
them.
Yeah.
You did research that shows who
right.
actually funds and what the salaries are for these not-for-profits and what they do with the money.
Yeah.
And how there's a revolving door between the politicians and the aristocracy.
Absolutely.
Very, very well.
I say it's a challenge to convince the people who give you funding that they're actually against the community. Is a difficult argument or to win.
Yeah.
Or it's difficult to make them understand, or they're not interested in understanding.
Or I know somebody, I won't say who, but you tell them the other side of the Democrat socialist story, or just the Democrat story, or provide a libertarian solution or a classical liberal, and I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear. It's too cognitively difficult to understand.
When I grew up, I think even in elementary school, we learned about the laissez-faire. It's government that governs best, governs least.
Yeah.
And I doubt they're teaching that now.
Laissez-faire.
Yeah.
Laissez-faire. I like that. Laissez-faire. Laissez-faire. Let it be. Let it pass.
Yeah.
How does Paris get fed? By the state getting out of the way.
Yeah.
Right. Eric, so 1 minute left. Our director tells us. Thank you for coming on the show again.
Thank you for having me.
Any last things you want to say before when can people vote for you for city council?
It's going to be this summer, but I just tell people to do research. I know it's hard between parking, kids, pets, taxes.
Yeah.
Life has a way of getting in the way, but it's so important to get out and vote.
Yeah.
It's really to do your research.
Well, especially when you see, I mean, I've lived in New York 15 years, not 130 years, but it's a tragedy to see your city slowly declining because it's unsustainable because of democratic socialism.
Yeah.
Eric, thank you for coming on Hardfire.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure.
Thank you for watching, everyone, and we'll see you next time on Hardfire TV. We have more than 60 shows on our YouTube channel. You can look those up. Brooklyn, Free Speech, Hardfire TV. So you can find those on YouTube, and this will be our 4th one with Erik Frankel that you'll find on there. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time on Hardfire.
Take it easy.
Social engineering, social engineering, social engineering, social